These are all stupid. Can you tell I think that? Yeah, I'm not necessarily proud of this one, how I kind of get a little invested in buying, you know, things. These were all over the Walmarts, Targets, Cracker Barrel, little mini arcade machines that actually work. Asterisk. Yeah, I'm a sucker for the retro gaming merchandise. You can tell I have a personality. And after the NES Classic Edition and SNES Classic Edition hit the scene and were really like taking the world by storm, world in quotation marks, it feels very easy to just think like, wow, these things are super popular. And they sold well, but it's just like, you know, it's just, are these sales units really like, damn, these things are going crazy. But I think those products really did help show how retro games can be kind of in sometimes. And because of that, many companies created some merchandise that places like Walmart were way more willing to put on their shelves. I remember back in the day, it was like impossible to find anything retro gaming themed or whatever anywhere but like really specific stores like GameStop. And because of little bastards like these things, they actually became kind of viable product lines, and that was really fun. Of course, these things kind of vary in quality. You have some retro gaming products that really don't care as much about quality. They just kind of care about like, ooh, Pac-Man. And outside of that, like, they don't function that well, or even if they do, they're just not that great. I remember some retro gaming merchandise that was like that was the My Arcade lineup of little micro arcade machines. Those things stunk. I thought they kind of looked lame. They didn't play that great. They usually used like the NES versions of those arcade games. And I'm just like, nah, I don't want to deal with that. And in my opinion, like if you're gonna go with, you know, a small arcade machine, you might as well go all the way with stuff like those quarter-sized arcade machines, the stuff that Numbskull made. Those are pretty damn cool. Or you go to the bottom of the barrel, like the cheapest, smallest one possible. You either go to one extreme or the other. The middle ground was the My Arcade stuff, and ew. And bottom of the barrel, here we go. Tiny Arcade. God damn, this is fun. Yeah, keychain size little arcade machines. They do work, albeit them working isn't necessarily like, oh yeah, I love playing this arcade machine, even in the smallest form. Like, it's more so, it works, but just to kind of maintain that novelty. I don't really think anybody actually wants to play this. Because in many ways, this is miserable. These arcade games on the Tiny Arcade units run at like 2 frames, not even 2 frames a second, just 2 frames. But they are functional, they're playable, they're recognizable, they have the same gameplay, all that stuff. But it's obvious that, you know, they kind of had to like remake the game for like hardware that is, you know, like the size of, you know, like a germ. But like I said, you might as well go to one extreme or another. You might as well go to like the more expensive, like larger sized ones that are like really well done, really authentic, and just like sculpted meticulously. Or you might as well go to the cheapest one. And yeah, this is like, you know, around like 15 to 20 bucks. And for what it is, I don't think they're that bad. This was one that I saw that I was just instantly like, oh damn, I gotta have that. It's Ms. Pac-Man and Galaga. I always wanted this like combo arcade machine, the Class of 81 arcade cabinet that included both games. And this is like a little mini replica of it. Not like a full-blown replica, but at least it continues the vibe of that original arcade machine. And yeah, I'm kind of like, why would you get like a Ms. Pac-Man or a Galaga Tiny Arcade machine at that point? Get the combo pack, you know? Because this is just Galaga on its own, and there's no reason to own this. You can just get the Ms. Pac-Man combo pack, man. Like, don't do this to yourself. But something that they did that is at least a reason to own this compared to like the combo pack is this. Yeah, a little tabletop Tiny Arcade. Does this have a keychain? Pretty much all of these Tiny Arcade products have a keychain on them, which I think is a little overkill. It's something where I can't imagine ever putting this on my keys because it's very large. Who has pockets for this? And even if you have pockets for this, Why would you do that? I guess you can attach it to other things, and I also feel like they include the keychain here as just kind of a way to emphasize, hey, this is small as f***, because really, would you want this accidentally going off on your key ring? This one, I gotta see. Does it include a key ring? It does not. Yeah, this is just kind of a neat little replica of one of those tabletop arcade units. And the controls are right down here. Okay, I think mine is constantly booting into come on. Yeah, mine, the screen turns on this one, but it just keeps booting after it kind of plays the first note of the startup jingle for Galaga. So I assume this one needs more batteries. But either way, this does kind of seem like a bit of a cheap little gimmick device. The fact that the screen is just this tiny, that's one thing that I noticed about all these products, is that they all use the same mold. Obviously, why? Because, you know, it's cheaper and it fits them all in the same line. But it just kind of makes it so then, like, when something doesn't necessarily fit that mold, it just ends up feeling kind of like, you know, it's just like, why? Why is this thing so big and this screen so tiny, you know? I get it, it's the tabletop design, but you probably could have shrunk it down a little bit so then it doesn't look as, like, you know, pathetic. But it's just like Galaga only needs, you know, like one button. So it's just like, I don't know. But for what it is, it succeeds. It's a tabletop Galaga arcade machine that you can technically still play. And they have so many other arcade games that are a part of this line. Pretty much the main ones that I always see are Galaga and Pac-Man, but there's a lot of other ones, including like Q*bert, Burger Time, Space Invaders. Space Invaders is probably like the most authentic here, or at least it feels the most like it's just like, yep, this is Space Invaders. Because of how simple and old this game is, it doesn't have nearly as much animation or movement as a game like Galaga, which is why a game like Galaga just feels so choppy and just really rough on a tiny arcade unit. At the very least, the Space Invaders game, like, this works. It's so basic, it's so simple, there's barely much going on in the game other than just moving your ship, and the Space Invaders come down very slowly, which makes this one of the more effective tiny arcade units. Which makes a game like Mappy a lot more interesting to see how this works in a tiny arcade environment, considering it's, you know, a platformer. It doesn't work either! I need to invest in Duracell. How about this? Is Burger Time gonna work? Maybe. Okay, well, Burger Time lets me play for like 5 seconds, and then the screen starts flickering, and now it reset. Well, you know what they say, when in doubt, Q*bert. Damn it. All right, Rally X, come on, baby. Let's see if this one works. Here's one that I'm very interested about. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, based off of the old school arcade game by Konami. Yeah, if you've ever seen that game, I don't really see how that's gonna work in this environment. And that's because it doesn't. Yeah, this is just a very dumbed down kind of reinterpretation of that original arcade game. That's why the box to this specifically calls it Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Turtle Fighter, because while it's obviously based on that original arcade game, you know, it's not an exact interpretation of it. But it's still pretty cool that this is here, even if it's, you know, like not the exact same thing. The graphics are very similar, but this really does remind me of like kind of a cell phone interpretation, like an old school cell phone game interpretation of an old school arcade machine, you know? And it has multiple screens and all that, you know, like they did go at least somewhat farther with it than you may think, but you know, like they still obviously had to kind of reinterpret the game to make it work in this environment. Not just in terms of like the hardware of this thing, but just the size of it, you know? Even if they had the full-blown arcade machine, it's just like, would you really want that in this size? However, this may be the most elaborate tiny arcade product I've seen. and it's one I'm very excited about. A full-ass Atari 2600! Look, they have the whole TV, the console, the controller. 10 games? I gotta try this out. This is so exciting. This is such a cool idea. They even have like the wood panel background on the product box. They have the shag carpeting underneath. It's like 70s, 80s, all in one box. That's really damn cool. Yeah, this is a much more elaborate setup for a product compared to other tiny arcade products. This obviously isn't something that they intend on you bringing places. You know, this feels more like a little desk toy. All right, moment of truth on. Now this is fun. Let's see. Oh, we gotta play 2600 Pac-Man. Hell yeah. I love this. I gotta be honest, this is probably the most functional and cool product that I've ever seen this company produce. I mean, like, it genuinely works really damn well. This controller, it's not good, like, by normal controller standards, but it might be a little better than the regular Atari 2600 controller. It's a little weird they misspell, I mean, they call breakout breakouts. But I'll check it out. All right, this is definitely a lot slower and less precise than regular breakout. I have to inch my little paddle like bit by bit, and I can hold it, but it's just, it's not as like precise as regular breakout. Let me see. Ooh, Pong. Yeah, this is Pong. Yeah, this works pretty well. I mean, it's damn Pong, so it's just like, you know, what is there to say? But yeah, I mean, this works a lot better than regular breakout on this device. Ooh, Tempest. Gotta see Tempest, how that works. This is another one that just feels good. This works pretty well on this device. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, I'm honestly, genuinely, really impressed by this thing. This is like really, this is one of the coolest little knickknacks you could get, like somebody that's into this dumb shit. Ah, hell yeah, yeah. I like this thing. I think this is great. It works as a good little desk toy, you know, something that people can all, come up to and be like, oh, what's that? Or something that can let people know it's just like, oh, I should stay away from him. But hey, maybe you want that. This is really damn cool. They even have little switches. They don't really work. They just kind of move a little bit, but they don't really work. But it's just like, still, this is awesome. Yeah, I think these are really cool little products, really fun things, really harmless things to just kind of get into and just buy a bunch of for no reason, Well, once I return Cubert for not working, then we'll be okay. Future Scott here, and yes, I've actually gone in and replaced the batteries on all of these. These all come with batteries pre-installed, but based on the idea that they've been rotting at a Walmart for a while and everybody just keeps on pressing the buttons on them and, they keep turning on and turning off and turning on and turning off again, it's fair to assume their demo batteries are donezo. So yeah, after just replacing the batteries real quick on these guys, which, requires opening them up with a screwdriver, which isn't that fun. It always feels like the products that you wish were just easy, just like clip off, pull the back off and replace the batteries. It always seems like the types of products that would really benefit from that the most always require a damn screwdriver. But they've been replaced, so let's give the Galaga Tabletop Edition a try. Turn it on right there. And wouldn't you know, that's a screen! So this is literally like the exact same game you'd find on the regular arcade cabinet, tiny arcade of Galaga, but this time in a bit of a more unique, cooler form factor. This is definitely pretty damn neat. But while this is definitely more unique than the traditional arcade cabinet style design, this one falls flat for me in a couple of ways. Mainly the screen size. Just to get this thing so cheap, they had to go for like a screen size that's literally like 1/10 of the surface area here. I just feel like this entire design would be so much more effective and just so much more eye-catching if this screen was just like, that big instead. Like, that would just be really damn cool. But the fact they shifted the controls to the side here, so that way you can kind of hold it like this as you're playing it, does make it a bit more usable than the standard tiny arcades, mainly because you're fingers aren't in the way. While this is a really cool and unique variation of the Tiny Arcade lineup, I do feel like it falls a bit flat with the choice of game here. I love Galaga, but the version of Galaga in the Tiny Arcade games is just not super ideal. It's very choppy, and also the fact that the screen is just so small. In the Tiny Arcade, it looks right because the screen is scaled to the size of the arcade cabinet. This one, while tabletop games definitely still have like a smaller screen, it just feels cheap. It just kind of feels like they took the screen from the Tiny Arcades and just put it in this slightly different form factor. I think a bigger screen would have been a lot cooler and much more eye-catching, but overall, still a cool variation in their product lineup. So I put batteries into Burger Time, and here it is. It works pretty well for what it is, you know. Burger Time's a classic arcade game, and it's all here and accounted for. However, this is one of those games, part of the Tiny Arcade lineup, that just does not work very well with the tinier arcade controls, the tinier screen, all of that. It's definitely not as choppy as a game like Galaga is. However, I would say it is very hard to actually see what's going on. The sprites of the enemies in Burger Time, the hot dog, the egg, all of that, they are not very visible, at least to me on this screen. It's very hard to see them pop up, and it's very hard to see where they're going and where you're going in comparison. Your fingers are kind of getting in the way of the screen here, which all kind of adds to it. It's definitely one of the more playable arcade games, a part of the Tiny Arcade lineup. However, at the same time, I do feel like the game itself just does not work with a screen this incredibly tiny. Though, still very impressive. It runs quite smoothly for what it is. Next up in the lineup of Tiny Arcade cabinets that I finally put batteries into was Q*bert. And Q*bert works okay. I do feel like some elements on the screen, such as the name entry portion, are incredibly hard to see. But overall, it works fine for what it is. I was able to make do with the controls, even if they were not ideal. But that's what you have to say with a lot of these Tiny Arcade cabinets. So it's very obvious it's more of a novelty, but still perfectly playable. New Rally X. After putting batteries into New Rally X, oh my god! It's not horrible, but my god, what happened here? For some reason, the audio on this one sounds like they played it off of a speaker and then recorded it with a microphone. And then in addition, there's just a lot of random slowdown in the game. Like when you create dust clouds, the game just kind of slows down a bit. It's just kind of like a bizarre version of New Rally X that works. It is, you know, fairly faithful. It's not like, oh man, what is this? Fucking Space Invaders? But this is one that definitely took a bit of a hit with the transition to Tiny Arcade. Putting batteries into Mappy, this one works pretty okay. Of course, with this being a platformer with side-scrolling elements, you know, this isn't like the most obvious fantastic pick for this lineup. I feel like sometimes they probably should have leaned more into games of the Space Invaders generation, but not many of those are still super popular today outside of a couple of the Atari released games and maybe things like Frogger. But I was surprised with how decent this one turned out. It's not like the ideal way to play, but none of these are, but actually worked out pretty okay. Well, this is flawless.